The scent hit me like a freight train sandalwood, steel, and something dangerously primal. I stood frozen in the elevator, my heart hammering as Ethan Caldwell, my boss and the coldest alpha I'd ever met, stepped in beside me. By the time the door slid shut, I was drowning in his presence, my Omega instincts screaming to submit while my mind begged me to run. It was supposed to be just another late night at Caldwell Enterprises, the glittering empire of New York's most ruthless CEO. Jamie Harper, a 24-year-old assistant with dreams bigger than my paycheck, had no business being in his orbit. Yet here I was, 6 weeks pregnant with his child after a night I couldn't fully remember, a company gala, too much champagne, and a moment of weakness that changed everything. The elevator dinged, and Ethan's icy blue eyes flicked toward me. "You're late with the quarterly reports, Harper," he said, his voice like frost on glass. No mention of the gala. No hint he even remembered the night we'd crossed a line. I clutched my tablet tighter, my stomach churning not just from morning sickness, but from the secret I hadn't yet dared to voice. How do you tell a man like Ethan Caldwell, who built his empire on control, that he's going to be a father? I'd always known I was an Omega, but growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd hidden it well. Suppressants, sheer willpower, and a knack for blending and kept my status under wraps. New York was supposed to be my fresh start, a place where I could be more than my biology. But Ethan's presence unraveled all that. He was the kind of alpha who didn't just command a room, owned it. 6 feet of tailored suits and unyielding authority. He made my knees weak and my pride bristle. That night at the gala, when he'd pulled me into a dark corner and kissed me like the world was ending, I'd felt alive for the first time in years. Now, I was paying the price. "Harper," he snapped, pulling me back to the present. We were in his office now, a glass and steel fortress overlooking Manhattan. "If you can't keep up, I'll find someone who can." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm doing my best, Mr. Caldwell." My voice was steady, but inside, I was a mess. I hadn't slept in days, haunted by the memory of his hands on me, the heat of his breath, and the terrifying realization that I was carrying his child. Omegas weren't supposed to get pregnant so easily, not with modern medicine. But fate had a cruel sense of humor. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a problem to be solved. "Your best isn't good enough. I expect perfection." "Then maybe you should have hired a robot." I shot back before I could stop myself. His eyebrow arched, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes: amusement. Interest. It was gone before I could be sure. "Careful, Harper," he said softly, dangerously. "You don't want to test me." But I was already testing him, wasn't I? Every day I kept this secret was a gamble. I'd seen what happened to people who crossed Ethan Caldwell, fired, blacklisted, erased from the corporate world like they'd never existed. If he found out about the pregnancy, would he see it as a betrayal, a liability? Or worse, would he not care at all? That night, I stayed late again, poring over reports to avoid going home to my tiny Brooklyn apartment, where the pregnancy test still sat on my bathroom counter like a ticking bomb. The office was quiet, the city lights twinkling below, when I heard his voice behind me. "You're still here." It wasn't a question. I turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, his tie loosened, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man who carried the weight of the world. I'm finishing the reports, I said, avoiding his gaze. His scent was stronger now, intoxicating, and my body betrayed me with a shiver. He stepped closer, and I felt the air shift. You've been off lately. Distracted. Why? My heart stopped. This was the moment to tell him. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I mumbled. Just personal stuff. His eyes narrowed. Personal stuff doesn't belong in my office. Then maybe you shouldn't have kissed me at the gala, I blurted, my voice shaking. The silence that followed was deafening. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his icy facade. That was a mistake, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He set the whiskey down, his hand brushing mine as he reached for a file. The touch sent a jolt through me, and I hated how much I wanted more. A mistake, I echoed, my anger flaring. That's all you have to say. He met my gaze, and for a moment, I saw something raw in his eyes, regret. Maybe, or something deeper. What do you want from me, Jamie? He asked, his voice low. You think you know me? You think you can handle this? I didn't know what this meant him. The pregnancy, or the storm brewing between us. But I knew one thing. I wasn't just an Omega to be dismissed. I was Jamie Harper, and I'd fought too hard to let him reduce me to nothing. I'm pregnant, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. And it's yours. The world seemed to stop. Ethan froze, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he stepped back, his eyes darkening. You're sure? I nodded, my hands trembling. I took 3 tests. I'm sure. He didn't speak for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the city skyline. When he finally turned back to me, his voice was cold, clinical. We'll handle this. Discreetly. Handle it. I snapped, my fear giving way to fury. This isn't a business deal, Ethan. This is a child. Our child. He flinched. Just barely. But it was enough to tell me he wasn't as unaffected as he wanted me to believe. I'll take care of you, he said, his tone softer now. Both of you. But we do this my way. And what's your way? I asked, dreading the answer. He reached into his desk, pulled out a folder, and slid it toward me. A contract, he said. Marriage. Financial support. Everything you need. In exchange, you follow my rules. I stared at the folder, my heart sinking. This was Ethan Caldwell, always in control, always calculating. Even now, faced with a child, he was turning our lives into a transaction. You can't buy me, I said, my voice breaking. This isn't just business. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something human. Maybe not, he said quietly. But it's the only way I know how to do this. The contract sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days, untouched, like a grenade waiting to detonate. Ethan's terms were clear: marriage for appearances, financial security for me and the baby, and absolute discretion. No love, no promises, just signatures on a dotted line. I wanted to burn it, to scream at him that a child deserved more than his cold, calculated world. But every time I reached for the phone to tell him no, I thought of the baby me baby. our baby and the reality of raising a child alone in New York City. I wasn't naive. I knew Omegas like me didn't get fairy tales. Growing up, I'd seen how society treated us econ-class citizens, valued for our biology, but not our dreams. I'd clawed my way out of that small-town mindset. But now, pregnant and tied to Ethan Caldwell, I felt the walls closing in again. He wasn't just my boss anymore. He was the alpha who'd changed my life in one reckless night. And I hated how much I still wanted him. On the fourth day, I went to his penthouse. The address was in the contract. A sleek Upper East Side tower that screamed wealth. The doorman barely glanced at me before waving me through, as if Ethan had warned him I'd come. When I stepped into the apartment, I was hit with a view that could have been ripped from a magazine floor-to-ceiling windows. Minimalist furniture. And Ethan standing by the bar, pouring a drink like he hadn't just turned my world upside down. "You're late," he said, not looking up. "I'm not your employee right now," I shot back, dropping my bag on his pristine couch. "I'm here to talk about this." I held up the contract, my hands shaking with anger and something else, hope. Maybe that he'd surprise me. He set the glass down and crossed the room, his movements deliberate, like a predator sizing me up. "You've read it." "Every word," I said. "It's thorough. Cold. Like you." His lips twitched. Almost a smile. "I'm protecting you, Jamie. And the child. Protecting us." I laughed. Bitter. "This reads like a merger, not a marriage. You're locking me into a cage with a paycheck." He stepped closer, and his scent hit me again, making my head spin. "You think I don't know what this means?" he asked, his voice low. "A child changes everything. I'm offering stability. Security. What about love?" The question slipped out, raw and unguarded. I hated how vulnerable it made me feel, but I needed to know. Ethan's expression hardened, but his eyes betrayed him there was pain there, buried deep. "Love complicates things," he said. "This is cleaner." Cleaner. I stepped toward him, closing the distance. "You kissed me that night. You held me like I meant something. Was that just biology? Or was it you?" He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. I turned to leave, my heart pounding, when his hand caught my wrist. "Don't walk away," he said, his voice rough. "Not yet." I pulled free, glaring at him. "Then give me a reason to stay, Ethan. Not a contract. A reason." For a moment, he looked like he might say something real. But then his phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. He glanced at the screen, his face shutting down. "I have a meeting. We'll continue this later." I left without signing, my mind a storm of emotions. Over the next week, Ethan didn't push, but his presence was everywhere, flowers delivered to my desk, a doctor's appointment scheduled without my input, a car waiting outside my apartment. He was staking his claim, not with words, but with actions, and it infuriated me as much as it made my heart ache. Then came the gala, another company event, this one to celebrate a major merger. I didn't want to go, but Ethan insisted, citing optics. I wore a tailored suit that hid my barely there bump, but I felt exposed under the chandeliers, surrounded by Manhattan's elite. Ethan was in his element, charming and untouchable, but his eyes kept finding me. When he pulled me onto the dance floor, I didn't resist. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he murmured, his hand firm on my waist. You're the one making it a transaction, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I want more than your money, Ethan. I want you. His grip tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd kiss me again. But then a reporter approached, and Ethan's mask slipped back into place. He steered me away, his jaw tight. We'll talk after, he said. But we didn't. The night ended with a Chris Cecil leak about the merger that sent Ethan into damage control mode. I went home alone, the contract still unsigned, my heart heavier than ever. The next morning, I found a new clause added to the contract. Delivered to my door, full custody of the child if I refused to comply. It was a gut punch. Ethan wasn't just offering Adele, was drawing a line. Sign, or lose everything. I sat on my couch, staring at the papers, tears burning my eyes. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. Not when I remembered the way he'd looked at me that night at the gala. Like I was the only person in the room. Not when I could still feel his touch, his scent, his everything. I was falling for him, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. The custody clause was Ethan's checkmate, and he knew it. I spent the next week in a haze, torn between rage and desperation. I couldn't lose my child, but signing that contract felt like surrendering my soul. I needed to see him, to confront the man behind the mask, not the CEO who thought he could buy my future. I didn't call ahead. I showed up at his penthouse on a rainy Saturday night. The city blurred through sheets of water. He opened the door, his shirt untucked, hair slightly mussed, like I'd caught him off guard for once. Jamie, he said, his voice softer than I expected. You shouldn't be here. Then why do you keep pulling me back? I demanded, stepping inside. The contract was in my bag, crumpled from how many times I'd read it, searching for a loophole, a way out. You think threatening to take my child will make me love you? His eyes widened, just for a second, before the mask returned. This isn't about love. It's about responsibility. Bullshit, I snapped, my voice echoing in the cavernous apartment. You're scared, Ethan. Scared of what this means. Scared of me. He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You think you scare me. You're an Omega who got in over his head. Then why can't you let me go? I stepped closer, my heart racing. Why do you keep looking at me like I'm more than a problem to solve? He didn't answer, but his silence was louder than words. I pulled the contract from my bag and tore it in half, letting the pieces fall to the floor. I'm not signing this. If you want me, you'll have to fight for me. For us. For the first time, Ethan looked lost. He ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. You don't understand, he said, his voice raw. I don't know how to do this. I've spent my life building walls. Jamie, you're the first person who's ever gotten through. My breath caught. This was the truth I'd been chasing. Then let me in, I said, my voice breaking. Stop hiding behind contracts and control. Be the man I saw that night at the gala. The one who kissed me like he meant it. He closed the distance between us, his hands framing my face. You want the truth, he whispered. I'm terrified. Of you. Of this child. Of what it means to want something I can't control. Then don't control it. I said, tears spilling over. Feel it. He kissed me then. Not like the gala, but like a man drowning. It was desperate, raw, and real, and I melted into him, my anger giving way to something deeper. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. I don't know how to be what you need, he admitted. You don't have to be perfect, I said. Just be here. Over the next few months, Ethan tried. He stopped pushing the contract, started showing up not just as a CEO, but as a partner. He came to doctor's appointments, his hand steady on mine during ultrasounds. He cooked dinner in my tiny apartment, laughing when I teased him about burning the pasta. Slowly, the ice around him thawed, and I saw the man beneath flawed, human, and trying to be better. But the world wasn't kind to Omegas, and Ethan's enemies saw our relationship as a weakness. A tabloid leaked the pregnancy, spinning it as a scandal to undermine his company. At a board meeting, an investor cornered me, sneering, Omegas don't belong in boardrooms. Ethan shut him down, his voice like steel. But the damage was done. The pressure was mounting, and I could see it wearing on him. One night, as we lay in bed, the city humming outside, I felt the baby kick for the first time. I grabbed Ethan's hand, pressing it to my stomach. His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like a man who'd found something worth fighting for. We're going to be okay, I said, my voice steady. All three of us. He didn't respond, but he pulled me close, his arms a shield against the world. The next day, he called a press conference, standing before the world with me at his side. Jamie Harper is my partner, he said, his voice unwavering. And our child is my family. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me. The room erupted, but Ethan didn't flinch. He'd chosen us, not just with words, but with actions, risking his empire for a chance at something real. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were still battles to fight, prejudices to face, but it was ours. When our daughter was born, Ethan held her like she was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. He looked at me, his eyes soft, and said, "You were right. This is worth everything." And in that moment, I knew we'd built something stronger than a contractive family. Messy and imperfect, but ours. The world could throw what it wanted at us. We'd face it together.